Women Are Worthy show. We're at the Thread Mill Complex. This is a phenomenal location and it's a beautiful day. I'm just so excited. I have the lovely, wonderful Raushanah Butler. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today, but it's a beautiful day. How are you doing?
I cannot complain.
Okay.
It's beautiful outside and I love the venue. You can't complain walking up and seeing waterfalls.
Yeah, you can. Because when I saw the waterfalls, I'm like, wow, it's just beautiful. So today we're going to talk to, as you know, or you may not know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And joining us again is the wonderful Raushanah Butler. She has her journey. She's going to share some things with us. And as the school progresses, I want the young generation and the interns to know what's going on and what could happen and how they can prevent certain things. So can you please share your story with us?
Whew, okay, well, I actually have a lot to share. So my experience with domestic violence started from when I was a child in my home. So I grew up in a household where, unfortunately, I was exposed to domestic violence for a very long time. And because that's the environment that I was used to, anything opposite of that or contrary to that was uncomfortable for me. So even with some of the relationships that I found myself in, especially once I got to college, I started entering into relationships that were violent or physically abusive, and even to a point sometimes being sexually abusive because of what my experience was. So when I got to college, that's when I started having more and more experiences, personal experiences with domestic violence. And then it flowed over into my adult life, and then it flowed over to the point where I became an advocate because unfortunately my childhood best friend was murdered in a relationship 3 years ago by her boyfriend. So that's part of my journey. And I can go into more specifics if you want a specific part of.
Well, when you said that, you know, domestic, can you tell us how it started? You said it started at home, but when it started with you as well, so can you talk about exactly what started? Because we may have someone out there who's listening and they're in the situation, but they don't want to call it domestic violence.
Right.
They're not sure. So can you tell us, like, what experience did you have, if you're okay to do that? If you're
Yeah,
okay
that's
to share
fine.
that. Okay.
So the two that I'll talk about specifically, the one that I was in college and the one that I experienced, my ex-fiance, a lot of people know who that is. It was very subtle. So it wasn't a thing where I would come home or I would experience violence right away. It started off with maybe a disagreement. They didn't like what I had on, didn't like how I wore my hair, didn't like who I was hanging out with, didn't like the time I came in, or you know, whatever the case may be, and would start picking arguments or fights with me, just based on little small things. And unfortunately, a lot of people have the misconception that they don't love you if they're not coming at you that way. They don't care about you if they're not asking you questions or, you know, wondering what you have on, what you're doing, who you're with, you know, that kind of thing. But that's a huge misconception because it shouldn't be that way. There's one thing to be, you know, concerned and protective, but there's another thing to be overbearing and want somebody to be exactly how you want them to be based on the relationship. So that experience, it was very subtle. It didn't happen overnight. And I think the first time it happened, I was so shocked, I really had no response. Because again, that's what I was used to.
When you said it happened, what happened?
Well, the first experience that I had in college, I actually went out with some friends. I can't remember if it was a football game or whatever, I can't remember what it was, but we went to Huddle House. I don't even know if they have Huddle Houses here.
I don't know.
But we went to...
Yeah, we have Huddle House.
We went to Huddle House. Okay, so we went to Huddle House. And it was typical. I went to Huddle House, hung out with some friends, went back home. I lived off the yard. I lived off campus. And so shortly after I got into my room, my phone rang, and it was my boyfriend at the time. And you know, he was asking me, was I coming to see him? You know, blah blah blah. And so eventually I went to see him, and during the course of our time together, he just asked me who I was with, what I was doing, and his whole demeanor changed. I mean, everything just changed. And the next thing I know, he was on top of me, choking me to the point where I couldn't breathe. to the point where it felt like something in my neck was gonna pop. And the only way that I remember being able to escape that was I had a keychain. And I had different keychains on my lanyard or whatever. And I just remember hitting him with the keychain and I was able to get away. And I actually ran from his place to a payphone. We don't have those anymore.
She's
I tell you how long ago.
She's blaming herself. Okay.
I ran to a payphone and I called the last number that I had on my mind, which is the friends that I just hung out with, and they came and got me, and I stayed at their house for a few days to escape the situation because I didn't know if he was going to come back to my, my apartment or not. So I just stayed with my friends for a few days. And when I was in the relationship that I was in with my ex-fiance, it started off the same way. It was more so we got into an argument, and the next thing I know, he hit me. And it wasn't a hit like a tap or a push or a shove. He hit me as if he was fighting another grown man.
Wow.
And so my natural reaction is if I'm hit, I'm hitting back. So we're fighting, like we are literally fighting back and forth. And it happened a number of times, I hate to say, but unfortunately I was numb to domestic violence by then because again, that's something I grew up in. But when I was able to get out of it, my response was completely different. It was completely different. I just remember being very calm, very collected, and I remember saying, one of us is going to end up in jail, the other person is going to end up in the hospital.
See, what I want the young, not even just the young kids to understand, but I want any woman or man, because it happens to men as well, so let's not say it doesn't, but I want people to understand, when you're in a relationship and someone has to physically put their hands on you, domestic violence doesn't just mean putting their hands on you. It could be verbal, it could be mental, and emotional. Thank you. You're the advocate, so you know this. So basically, I want people to understand, if you're in that relationship, get out, because you have to love yourself. And sometimes you have low self-esteem or you don't have family support. So I want people to understand that, get out of that situation. With the younger generation and also any woman out there, you're right. There's a misconception that if he doesn't hit me, he doesn't love me. Right. And it starts off with the push, a shove, and I want, and I do have young ladies who are interns here at the moment, and I want them to understand, I don't care who you're dating, woman, man, you have to understand, no one should be putting their hands on you. You are a valuable asset out there. You have to love yourself. And I'm not saying, let me go back. I'm not saying because you allowed someone to hit you or use the word allowed that you don't love yourself. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is you are a valuable asset out there and no one should be putting their hands on you.
And to that point, I think oftentimes people don't say anything because they're embarrassed, especially men.
Right.
Men normally do not report instances of domestic violence because nobody's going to go to the police and say my girlfriend or my wife was beating on me.
Right.
Or, it's to the point where a lot of domestic violence situations or cases really go unreported simply because those people don't have the support that they need. So just think about the number of cases that are reported.
So double that,
or triple that, or triple that. There are so many people that don't report what happens, and people think, oh, he only hit me once. It's still domestic violence.
Or she only
hit me once. It's still domestic violence.
What is the statistics? Is it what is the statistics on the domestic violence? Would you happen to know?
So it's 1 out of 4 women, 1 out of 7 men.
Wait a minute, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in here, and it's a possibility 1 out of us could be getting hit,
And then this is even more startling. Every 9 seconds, a woman is being impacted by domestic violence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Somebody just got hit.
That's crazy. So someone who's watching, they're impacted. Either they're getting hit or someone that they know is getting hit.
Absolutely.
Who may not be telling them that they're getting hit, but someone in that circle.
Absolutely.
So you were in that situation. So here's my question to you. what would you have liked, going back with knowing what you know now, what would you have liked someone to have, how they would have helped you, what they could have said, what they would have did to make you comfortable to come to, let's say if you've known me, how could I have helped you?
Well, one of the things is not be judgmental. A lot of people say, well, what did you do?
Right.
What did you say? Sometimes it doesn't have to be provoked. Most times it's not provoked. In addition to that, don't think you have to offer a solution, just listen. Because oftentimes we don't have people we can go to that we can just talk to get it off of us.
Right.
You know, and many times when we're talking about it, we're able to come up with our own solution or think about, you know what, I just need to get that off my chest. Now I have the strength I need to do whatever I need to do. Another thing is don't take it so lightly,
Right.
and so small to the point where, you know, just say, oh, well, you know, just pray about it and go home. You know, just take it as it is. It's a threat. It's a situation. It's abuse. Whatever's going on. Do you need to stay with me? Who can I call? Whatever the case may be. But those are the top three things. I think a lot of people are judgmental in domestic violence situations, and a lot of people say, well, she's or he's going to go back anyway, so I'm not going to help. Or she must have said something, or he must have did something, so, you know, that's their issue, that's their problem, that's their business. Mm-hmm. But if somebody comes to you, they're coming to you because they are seeking help. So that's the biggest thing.
And I think one of the things I realized, because again, until I started doing the Women Are Worthy show, and for those who are tuning in for this first time, the Women Are Worthy show was created because when I would talk to people, they would tell me Beyonce, Jay-Z's their role model. No shade, that's fine, but we have role models in the community that are doing things that I want people to understand. We have celebrities in the community. And I would talk to the younger generation and they would say the same thing. Michael Jordan, this one, that one. But we have people in the community that are doing great things. Our mission is we're here to empower, embrace, and we're here to build character. We're here to motivate, and we're basically, we want to be here to motivate the souls of people. So this is a show where we're sitting down, we're having honest conversations, we're educating, entertaining, and enlightening each other by just sharing our stories. We're all in the same book, just different chapters. So that's the purpose of the Women Are Worthy show. We don't just interview women, we interview all walks of life. So I want to commend you for even speaking out about it. And I have a little PSA, I really want to put this out there. Anyone who's watching this show right now, whether it's the replays, you know, YouTube, Facebook, and what I want you to understand is if you're going through something, please, is there a phone number, the 1-800 number that they have, like for someone to call? Can you give that number out, please?
So if you go to the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence, not only do they have a phone number listed, they also have resources for every county that you are in. So no matter where you live, there's resources available for you to be able to get to someone that can assist you in that situation.
Because we have people that live in different, because you know, obviously when you're streaming, you're doing it in different countries and different states, and when we do the replays. So check if you're in the United States, just go on the website for the National Coalition.
The Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence.org.
Okay, so go to any coalition for domestic violence, because it's not just Georgia that, you know, we have a huge fan base in Houston. So just go on there and check, because I want to make sure that you're seeking help. You're not alone. It's happening to maybe your friends, but we're here just to have you share your story, because I want you, the purpose of her being here as well is she's sharing her story and she's being open, she's being honest. So I want you to be able to do that if you need help and have a friend. And for those who have friends who are being abused, which is true, we can't always say or even say to them, well, you're gonna go back anyway, so why do I need to help you? Because I think that's the worst thing you want to hear when you're in that situation.
Absolutely.
So even if you come to us 10 times, it's not our job to say, you're gonna go back to him anyway. It's not, you know, so.
Well, and then you have to think about the different factors that come into play. Some people go back because of financial reasons. Some people go back because of children.
Right.
Some people go back because, you know, it's just a number of reasons. So you can't say the reason why they're going back. Even just in the state of Georgia, it was impossible for a woman to break her lease if she was fleeing a domestic violence.
So you said, wait a minute. My husband's beating me up. I'm saying hypothetically, but my husband's beating I want to leave. The lease is in my name. I can't break the lease to get out.
Oh, you can break it, but you're gonna have to pay for it. Think about the financial implications. So you're paying to break your lease. You need money to have another, find another apartment. You're gonna need money for another down, deposit or whatever the case may be. Financially, they cannot leave. Then you also have children that may be in childcare or school or whatever the case may be. The financial implications are huge, and that's one of the reasons why women do not leave. They don't leave because they can't afford to leave. So it's not as cut as dry as people think it is.
See, I never thought about that. I never thought about that because I used to think that, oh, you can just get up and leave. I never thought about the financial repercussion when you break your lease. So, and that's why I'm glad we're having this discussion, because you definitely gave me another perspective to look at. I've never thought about, well, you shouldn't leave. Well, we had another lady on the show, and we were talking about domestic violence. And she told me that what she later on she was trained to do is keep a bag packed in the event she has to leave. And I never thought anything of it. She says you keep a bag packed, and then you can when you see that getaway, then you can leave. And there was a movie with Jennifer Lopez. I can't remember the name of the movie, but she was in this movie. And can one of you guys Google the name of the movie, Jennifer Lopez? It was a movie she was in, and it was domestic violence. She was a waitress, and she married this guy. I think he was a police officer, and he was beating her butt. And she eventually packed a bag and she left and she escaped. But she went through a lot. She actually went through a lot. So just listening to you, I just can't imagine that. I'm not saying, oh, I'm big because I didn't go through that, but I can't imagine that. I look at you as being a superstar because you basically survived that. And you didn't just survive, you thrived.
So many people don't.
Right.
Such as my best friend, she didn't survive.
What's the name of the movie? Enough. That's the name of the movie, Enough. Ooh, I'm loving my interns. Tonight's show, we have our male interns manning the camera, doing the lights. So we have the males tonight. So, they just so extra. I think they a little bit around me a little bit too much. But anyway, I can't imagine, because when I talk to you on the phone, you're so bubbly and you get up every morning. You didn't let your past dictate your future, and you're here helping other people. So without further ado, I want to let people know that she's also a reverend, okay? So she preaches it. Why you did that? Why?
No reason.
I liked her how she turned around. No reason. And I'm loving, I went on your page and just see what you're doing in your bio. So how important is it that you think that women should support each other?
Oh goodness. It's huge. We are our sister's keeper. And I don't say that to sound cliche-ish or for it to be another quote or whatever the case may be, but truthfully we are our sister's keeper.
Right.
I mean, if nobody else have our backs, we should have each other's backs. Single moms, married, young, old, in between. It's hard to be a woman. It's hard to be a woman. Yes. And so it's extremely important for us to have each other's backs. And one thing that we need to be very cognizant of, especially when we're talking about domestic violence, is we need to be supportive of decisions that women tend to make in this space.
Right.
Because we really don't know everything that they're going through. We only know what they're telling us.
Right.
So we have to be supportive without judgment, so that possibly they can flee or have the strength enough or support enough or encouragement enough to flee the situation that they're in.
Do we have any comments on the Facebook? Anyone's on there?
We had people, but we just have to comment.
Okay. We want to thank everyone for tuning in, for supporting the Women Are Worthy show, because tonight is a serious content. So we want people to understand what's going on. And for me, it's really important because we have our young interns, and as I call them, the youngins, and we want them to understand that this is an important topic. So my question to you is, not only are you a pastor, what led you down that road? From being, domestic violence to being an advocate, and what led you to be a pastor?
Well, I'm not a pastor.
Excuse me,
I'm a
minister.
Okay.
Minister.
I was actually a minister before I was an advocate.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
I've been a minister since 2002.
Okay, so what led you down that road?
well, actually 2003. Well, I actually was called at a very early age. It was something that I wrestled with for a long time because growing up, it just wasn't something that looked like something that I would do. All of my experiences haven't been positive. And so when I got to the point where I accepted my call, I knew that it was bigger than me. And I knew that eventually God would reveal what my purpose would be in the midst of that. And I think at this point that I'm in now, this season I'm in now, there seems to be something God wants me to do to bridge that between my clergy role and my advocate role. And so I'm trying to figure that out, seeking God for that, because a lot of times, unfortunately, there are a lot of religious spaces that tend to turn a deaf ear to domestic violence. And I know that's an unpopular opinion.
No, put it out there because I'm about to jump on something else.
I know it's an unpopular opinion,
off.
but you know, it's the truth. A lot of religious spaces, they tend to turn a deaf ear because the first thing they'll say is pray about it, or you know, you're not supposed to be separated from your husband, or whatever the case may be. And I think that mindset drives people back to the abuser sometimes. And you should pray about it. In addition to that, there should be counseling available, there should be resources available, financial resources available. There should be shelters or houses or something that you can put these women and men in so that they can get themselves together until they can, you know, rectify the situation. But there should be things in place. So in addition to, not saying don't.
Right.
Because you very well should.
Right.
You should. You should pray for yourself and the abuser.
Right.
However, there should also be resources in place. So that is not just a one-off answer.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do better to kind of come together to assist those that are going through.
And I can only speak, and I'm going to say this, particularly in the African American church. I'm going to put it out there. You ain't got to, I'm going to put it out there. Google me, email me, okay? Because it's so true, because I can only speak about the people that I know who were in that situation. They've gone to there, and I'm not blaming the church, I'm just saying the experience, or one particular church. I'm not saying Baptist, I'm not saying that. I am just saying, I've noticed the women who have emailed me, reached out to me regarding domestic violence, where they reached out to their pastor, and the pastor told them to go home and pray. You need to be with him. You need to do no. Yes, you pray about it, but you can't. It's not like, okay, turn the other cheek. You can't. And I'm not saying, you know, use your common sense, because sometimes you're not thinking. And when you go to your pastor's telling you something, you want to listen to what he's telling you to do.
And again, I use the word numb, but it's the truth. A lot of people that have been in it for so long, they're so numb to the fights and the words and the violence that's spewed towards them that there is no reaction. You know, they become robots. They just do the same thing over and over and over and over again because they're so comfortable with the dysfunction that they're used to that. I remember when I went through it with my ex, that was one of the things that was told to me, was to pray about it. But I remember one time in particular, I was praying, and he was beating me in my back.
While you were praying?
While I was praying. And when I think about it now, I think about how deep I was in it. Like, it took everything in me to kind of release myself from that situation. Not just prayer, but I had to go to counseling for years to break that. I had to go to counseling for years. I had to make a decision. I had to, you know, there are different things I had to do to release myself from that, because again, I've been in it ever since, you know, I was little, and it's all that I knew.
We have a question?
Not a question, just a comment from Pearl Farland and Mosque. We just need present.
Present? Aw, thank you for being present. Aw, we appreciate it. Hey, Pearl, how you doing, Pearl? But, you know, we're having this honest conversation. And would you say that you're breaking generational curse for your family?
Oh, absolutely.
High five on that one.
Absolutely. A generational curse and a cycle. simply because everything is not a curse. They're just cycles that we tend to repeat.
Ooh, can I use that one? I
You
like
can
that.
use it because it's what we see, because it's what we do. We tend to mimic and do what we're used to seeing and doing.
Right.
So there are cycles that we have to repeat. Again, that's all I knew. I didn't even know what a healthy relationship looked like. I didn't know what it looked like for a man and a woman married, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, to have a healthy relationship without it being cussing and fussing, without it being yelling and screaming, without it being hitting and punching. I didn't even know what that looked like. And so it took for me to surround myself with people that emulated what I wanted to see a healthy relationship look like, what I was seeking. But I had to do the work. So it wasn't something that happened overnight, and it's not that cut and dry for a lot of people.
Right.
It just really isn't. And I hate to say that, but it just really isn't. I mean, especially, again, you have children involved, you have financial things involved, you have assets involved, you have so many things, and so many people have their lives tied up, with other people, so it's hard to break that.
So basically what I'm hearing is we need to be empathetic to people when they come to us and not make any judgments and things like
Absolutely
that.
no judgment.
So with that
Absolutely
said,
no
you talked about relationships. So my question to you is, you know what you don't want. What are you looking? No, before I go there, are there any? I'm gonna go in. I'm trying to massage you a little, okay? So what do we do now that you know what you don't? Is there any? Would you say there's any traits or is there a characteristic that someone can find out or know that a guy is abusive? Because pretty soon some of my interns will be going to college, the young ladies and the young boys. So what traits? Because here's another thing. He may have his homeboy or his friend, and his friend is abusing, or he's not sure if he should get involved. Let me mind my business. So what traits, because I'd like you to speak to the interns, what traits do the young men first? What traits should they look for?
It's crazy because it's almost two opposite ends of the spectrum. You can have one person that's extremely nice, that's a perfect gentleman, that's doing everything that he needs to do, that's very complimentary, but still violent. And on the other end, you can have someone want to know what you're doing, who you're doing it with, what time you're doing it, when you're gonna be back, and that thing, that kind of thing, and they can be violent. So it's hard to really pinpoint exact traits. However, most times, red flags that will pop up will be, they will start questioning your whereabouts a lot, or they will start becoming very verbally aggressive towards you, like, didn't I tell you not to? Those kind of things. When they start becoming verbally aggressive, normally something else follows. I can't say it always does, but normally something else follows.
When you say something follows, you're talking about physicality and hit,
Well,
pull,
it's
shove?
not always a push or shove. It could just be grabbing of the arm. And oftentimes we don't look at that as a sign because it's so subtle. But you grab your arm one too many times,
Yeah.
to me that's a sign.
Right.
With my ex, I had the one from college, there was no sign until it actually happened. My ex-fiance, there were definitely signs that led up to it. He was very argumentative for little things. Like, I could say the sun is bright and shining. He could say it's gloomy outside and we get into an argument. Something that small. Or, he'll come home from work and, I'm all happy and he just doesn't want to talk. He'll start an argument. Or, just things like that. So it just really depends on each situation. However, I would just say if someone is telling you they're being abused or if they have concerns, listen to them. If they have concerns, listen.
Are my interns listening to this? Okay.
And don't be afraid to report something. So even for my daughter is a freshman in college, and I encourage her to be diligent in what she shares with her roommates and her classmates and things of that nature, but also be comfortable enough and know that she's protected if she shares something with a mandated reporter, whether it be me or somebody on her college campus, because at the end of the day, you want to protect them.
Right. What is your love language?
My love language, my top two are quality time and words of affirmation.
Okay.
Yeah, those
Mine's
are.
words of affirmation,
Yeah, so those are my love languages. Somebody that knows how heavy the mantle is that I have to carry and not try to compete with that. So whether it's my advocacy work or ministry, or even just the fact that I'm a single mother, knowing that this is important to me.
Right.
You know, and knowing that that's my purpose. I'm not gonna stop being a mother. I'm not gonna stop being an advocate, and I'm not gonna stop being a minister. Knowing that I'm passionate about this work, but also know that, you know, if it gets down to it, we'll be in it together.
Ride or die.
Ride or live.
I know you was gonna say that. I'm ride or die.
I'm trying to ride or live. She trying, you know.
Yeah, because I plan on being here for God till wheels fall off. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, ride or die. Not like, okay, Bonnie and Clyde. I'm talking about till one of us croaks, I'm gonna still be here. You know, as I said, till one of us croaks, I'm gonna still be here. I'm gonna still be here. So, if you could, can you kind of tell us the story? You know, and I know it may bring up memories, but I'm really wanting you to tell the story because we don't try to get salacious here. But I want you to bring up what your best friend went through and how she passed. And the reason, if you don't want to, that's okay.
Oh, it's fine.
The only reason I'm bringing that up is because there's always someone out there whose friend is going through something, and then I'd like you to talk about how you if you did try to help her, what you tried to do. Because again, we don't want people to feel guilty and like, oh, I'm in somebody's business. So can you share that story with us, please?
Yeah, so April of 2016, my childhood best friend was murdered. They found her in the bathtub. And her boyfriend that murdered her, immediately he went on the run. And so it took them a while to find him, but it didn't take long for them to find him in Tennessee. The thing that bothered me about the whole situation, and if you go to my page, I have a news story, the link up, and there are even comments where people say the system failed her. He was...
List your page so if they want to go check it out.
Facebook is RN Butler, just RN Butler. And I believe that particular story is public, so anybody should be able to see that one. But the system failed her because he was jailed, and after he was jailed, he was released on bond. There was a situation where she was getting a TPO against him to protect herself from him, but they lived together.
Can you tell them what a TPO is, please?
Temporary protective order, and people file those so that they can have protection against their abusers. And so he was able to get out on bond, and shortly after he killed her. The thing that bothered me about that whole situation is there were physical signs. She had pictures up, and she took the pictures down, but a lot of us were on the screen where he choked her so bad that the blood vessels in her eyes burst. You know, from the outside looking in, that should have been enough.
Right.
That should have been enough. And her life should have meant more to do more in that situation. But unfortunately, she's no longer with us, and she left behind 5 children. And prior to that, she and I had a very brief conversation. It wasn't long. But we had a brief conversation. We were kind of going back and forth, and I was like, why don't you just come to Atlanta? You know, I didn't really have much. I was no longer in my house, so I could put her up in another room and, you know, do these big to-do things. But I know sometimes you kind of have to get away from your environment.
Right.
You know, to kind of think straight, come up with a plan, that kind of thing. So it was just a very brief conversation, and she just said she'll let me know. Never heard back from her, but we was, you know, comment back and forth on Facebook. And I'll be honest, when I got the news that she died, I was angry. Like, only other way to put that. And I'm talking about angry, like with a rage angry. To the point where it was recommended for me not to even go to the funeral. That's how angry I was. And it took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me emotionally, mentally, physically, because you think about what could I have said, what could I have done? Did I not see the signs? Was I not aggressive enough, assertive enough? You know, you just think about all these questions. You think about what you should have done. But that anger turned into advocacy. Because I think about how many women and men are dead because of that.
Right.
And so it turned into advocacy. And even though I went through it, even though I've seen it, even when I was a teacher, I saw it. I would have students come and they would come with busted up mouths or, whatever the case may be. And that was something I had to deal with, as a teacher. But that was a turning point for me because it should not have come to that. And I just think about how many men and women lose their lives because we don't pay close enough attention, or she's going to go back anyway. She's grown, she's going to do whatever she wants to do. And sometimes we have to make it our business.
It takes a village.
It does. Sometimes we have to make it our business, and I know everybody can't do everything, and we can't be all to all people. I know that, I get that, but what you can do it. And I think, it just bothered me because I felt like I didn't do enough, and I can only speak for myself. But that's the reason why I became an advocate. So I'm not just a domestic violence advocate, I'm also a sexual assault advocate because a lot of times there's an intersection between domestic violence and sexual assault. So even men and women that are married, they think, well, that's my husband, but no, there are husbands that rape their wives, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. But her story, it's still really hard for me, simply because of the fact that she should still be here. I feel like she should still be here because the system really failed her.
The system failed her, but you didn't. And this is outside looking in, mind you. So I don't have, I really respect you. So this is what I'm going to say. You did the best that you could for her. And what you're even doing that's better, you're an advocate now. So her life is gone. She's living in your marriage. She's living within you. So you're out there trying to save other people. So, and it's not for me to say, well, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm not going there.
Oh, I get
what
it.
I am going to say is you are making a difference because you're putting something out there right now that may stop because you kept counting. Was it 10 that you counted to? How many? 9 where someone got slapped. You know what I'm saying? So you could be waking someone else up out there because I've had situations where I've had acquaintances when I knew something was going on, and of course I approached them, but I think I approached them too early because I caught on right away. It's almost like, and they're living in these beautiful mansions. I had one lady, and I'll share this story. Her husband, she was living in $1 million home. Her husband was beating her tail, and it got so bad that he was paying the mortgage. And what happened was, he was beating her so bad, he eventually left her for his secretary, and the house was in foreclosure. So here now, she left high school, doesn't have a degree, doesn't have any work experience, so now she has to leave this location. She was putting in applications for apartments, so you know what happened. She didn't have any work history, she didn't have any credit history. It was horrible where she went to Walmart to find a job, they didn't want her. So what happened was, and I'll say it, she was looking for an apartment, and it's not me because it takes a village, and I believe I'm supposed to help whoever I can help. You know what I'm saying? So I called the apartment complex and told her no, and I had a conversation with the manager telling them like if it was your mother, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, they did whatever they needed to do, and they got her in there. When I say she was working at Walmart from sunrise to sunset, he took the house. Well, of course, the house was in foreclosure. He took the equity from what I'm hearing. It was horrible. This woman is 56 years old. 56 years old. And then she was living with this man. I'm telling you, they belonged to the country club. They were doing a lot of things. And someone introduced me to her. How they introduced me, they're like, Jackie, she needs food. So I went to Walmart, got a gift card, and gave her some. So when I drove up, I'm like, yes. I'm like, what? What's going on here? On the outside looking in, not on the inside looking out. So when she told me her story, I was flabbergasted. Right. So when she, the whole story. So the thing is, and then she told me she never wanted to tell anyone. And she was a Caucasian woman, and I'm saying that because you can see the bruise. When you're darker, you really can't see much. You saw the black eyes. And I'm like, the neighbors are not doing anything because she says, no, they don't want to get involved because he's a top executive. And
goodness.
Okay, you got a story to tell. When you say goodness, bring it on.
It's just that happens so often. Even before my experience here, I had a stalking experience. Again, there's so much intersection. So he never abused me, but he stalked me. And this particular person, I went to the police so that I could give a TPO. And they told me unless he physically harmed me, there was really nothing they could do. And this was back in 2001, 2002.
In Georgia?
Yeah, this is in Georgia. Laws have changed since, but think about 2001, unless he physically harmed me, there was nothing they could do. Even when I was a teacher, one of my students in particular, her boyfriend, I don't think it was her husband, her boyfriend was beating her on a consistent basis. So one day she would come in with a busted eye, another week she'll come in with a missing tooth. And then it got to the point where the police, I don't know, she called the police or the police called me while they were at her apartment or whatever. And the police actually said on the phone, you know, you can call us 100 times, she's not leaving. I said, well, what about the kids? You know, and that's another thing. If she's arrested for fighting back, where that happens, he's arrested for beating her.
The kids are in the system.
The kids are in the system, and that happens a lot. Happens more than people think. That happens a lot. I mean, I also had a situation with another student where she felt obligated because she had a child with this young man. He was repeatedly raping her, even when she said no. But she was like, but that's my child's father. No. She said, so even when I said, if you say no,
It's no.
it's no. That's not an obligation. She actually eventually went to counseling and was able to break that tie, but it took almost 6 months to a year.
This is mind-boggling to me.
And those aren't even extreme cases.
Right.
That's the scary thing. Those are cases, but they're not extreme cases compared to other stories that I've heard where people have been shot, you know, where people have been strangled, where people have been beaten black and blue, or people are half paralyzed, you know, whatever.
Mutilated.
Yeah, mutilated. I mean, it happens so often, or it happens too much, I should say. It just happens too often, to the point where it's just too many stories out there. It's just entirely too many stories out there.
So, where do you see your advocacy in 4 years from now? Where do you see yourself and what you're doing with this?
I want to be the bridger between the community and clergy. And I want to be the bridger between community and clergy simply because there seems to be a breakdown in that particular space. So for me, being clergy, knowing I don't have all the answers, but I want to be equipped enough, you know, from a advocacy standpoint to where I can provide both services to people that are in need. So whether it's resources, I lobby at the state capitol. I've done that with Marcy's law that was passed last year. So there are things that can be done, and I want to be able to be on the front lines doing that.
Okay, here's my other question to you. 45 calls you and says, you know what? We're gonna pass this into, that's what I said. Well, he calls you, says, look, I heard you on the Women Are Worthy show. I was watching you on the Women Are Worthy show. And if we could pass one thing, forget about the procedure, if we could pass one thing into law regarding domestic violence, I'll give you 2. What 2 things would you like him to pass and implement into law? Good question, baby.
That's a great question.
Yeah! High five! No, give me a 10! Okay.
All right, let me think about this. So, because one of the ones that I really wanted to happen is happening, and that was with being able to break the lease.
Okay. So how does that work now? You can get back to that. So let's say something happens and I need to break the lease. Do I need to show the police report and all that? What do I need to do? I mean, if you know, or I can just, because if you're running, do they need to see where I'm going to, or we're not sure yet on how that works?
I don't think you should. I don't think you have to report where you're going to.
Okay.
Because again, if you're going to a shelter or whatever the case may be, or a safe house.
Right, you don't want him to
Right.
know. So so when you break your lease, do you just say, my husband, you know, I'm getting beat up, or is there a police report you need to show?
Well, in the one case that just happened, when one of the, not my friends, but somebody I just assisted, that's what she did. She showed a copy of her TPO.
Okay.
And she was able to break the lease.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to your question, if he were to pass 2 things, what would those 2 things be? First of all, there needs to be more money poured into the communities to assist with domestic violence resources.
Okay.
Unfortunately, of the shelters are full.
Yes.
Also, there are no other places available for them to go. And a lot of them have children. So there needs to be more money poured into resources and bills and lobbying for domestic violence, period. The second thing,
This is why I don't like giving questions ahead of time, because I want it to be natural.
I don't know, let me think about it.
Okay. Now, how can someone, if someone wants to have you come out and speak, be an advocate, and just like if they're doing a panel and they want you to be part of the panel, how can they reach out to you? Do you have a website? Do you have an email address, your phone number? Put it out there.
So you can go to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/RM Butler. And you can also reach me at my email address, which is Raushanah, RAUSHANA_Butler@hotmail.com.
Okay. So, where do you see yourself, Raushanah Butler? Where do you see yourself, not just in advocacy, like if I were to bring something over to you and say, okay, these are the top 3 things, what top 3 things would you like to see accomplished within the next 2 years for you?
Oh, for me. Well, as it relates to advocacy, I want to be more versed. I want to know more about all the laws, all the steps, all the resources, all the agencies. Unfortunately, because I do it from a volunteer standpoint, I miss a lot of, the educational side of it.
Right.
But I try to get as much information as I can. The second thing is I want to be able to speak for those that no longer can speak. And one being my childhood best friend, but she, in addition to her, there are more.
Right.
I want to be able to empower others to share stories of others that are no longer with us, so people can hear their voices beyond the grave. They should be able to hear their voices and their stories beyond the grave. And the third thing I want to happen is for me to mentor other teenage girls and young adults as it relates to healthy relationships, but mainly loving themselves. So that they can make better decisions when it comes to relationships, or even not just relationships, or friendships, the type of people they choose to hang out with. So those are the top 3 things.
So what I want to talk about, and again, because our show, we're here to empower, embrace, and build character. We talk about relationships. Last Wednesday, oh my God, I celebrated my anniversary.
Congratulations.
Next year, we're planning on going. My goal is, I'm putting it out there, Bali or Greece. So we already have a place to go in Greece.
Nice.
So we just have to figure this out now, prepare for it. So, and I thank my husband for supporting me in the things that we've done and how we're doing it. And we pride ourselves in having a healthy relationship, because look, bruh, no, can't do that. And I'm not, and I'm not here making it light, but you do have to love yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because the minute you see, and I was raised by men, I didn't have a lot of female influence, I had more male influence. So I was raised into being confident, but when I'm around other women, sometimes it comes off as cocky or whatever, and that's fine, but I love me. And, not that it's all about me, but I'm not going to tolerate certain things. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm noticing with some of the women, they've lowered their standards. And we're talking about in Georgia particularly, where there's 10 men to 1 woman, or whatever however the stats go. You can't lower your standards. You are a queen. You need to keep that crown on your head. You don't need to be kissing a whole bunch of frogs to turn into a prince or a king. You know what I'm saying? So I always try to talk to women about that when I am out there doing empowerment speeches and things like that. And talking about relationships, because I've been married over 25 years, so I know a thing or two about relationship. And I don't just love him, I like him. And it's important to me because, look, bro, if I can't like you, we can't have this. And then I'm a loud woman. So it takes a good guy to deal with me, because most women complain about the man. No, I don't know if I'd marry me.
Well, see, even to that point, we encourage people to love themselves, but they don't even like themselves. So you have to do both even for yourself. I have to like me and love me.
But the thing is, here's the kicker. We're telling people to love themselves or like themselves. What is your definition of love and like?
Right.
Because that's what we got to break down. Because you can say you love, but what is your definition of love? You know, like, oh yeah, he hits me, that means he loves me. So, you know what I'm saying? So we got to break that down. So it's just, again, Raushanah, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your journey, being open with us. And I just, again, want to say this to you. I understand your childhood best friend, she's living within you. Your light is shining and her light is shining. So it's not going for nothing. And I like the fact that, I really respect the fact as another woman that you're going out here and you're an advocate. And you're doing it because you're passionate about that. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate what you're doing with that. You're keeping her flame lit by doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So we appreciate that. And for those of you, thank you for tuning into the Women Are Worthy show. Don't forget to go on our YouTube channel because this will be edited. Our YouTube channel is the Women Are Worthy Network. Our Facebook page is the Women Are Worthy show. And if you want to hit me up, you can email me at the Women Are Worthy. No, my email address is Women Are Worthy. Girl, I got so into it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to mess up. Our email address is womenareworthy@gmail.com. Women, plural, WOMEN @gmail. womenareworthy@gmail.com. And don't forget our Instagram page. It's the Women Are Worthy show. And our YouTube channel is the Women Are Worthy Network. So let me repeat that again because they're going to have to edit it anyway so we can make it better. Our YouTube channel is the Women Are Worthy Network. Our Instagram page is the Women Are Worthy show. And our Facebook page is the Women Are Worthy show. So we'll see you next week. Bye.